In the world of Pokemon, there are many mysteries to explore and new expansions to the lore that are always being added. Like, what are Ultra Beast? Is Necrozma an Ultra Beast? What about Hoopa? What criteria is needed to call these things Ultra Beasts? What about Ultra Wormholes and Ultra Space? What makes them special from other spatial distortions like space-time distortions? Are these abilities perhaps messing with the timeline? Does that not create paradoxes like the Paradox Pokemon? How are they involved? Does Eternatus and Kyurem being extraterrestrial factor into realities and these distortions? Well, I think they might, and all of these questions might relate to one another more than we realize. It's been a while, but many probably did notice my absence, so let's move on with our video. In the newest ZA trailer, Hoopa made an appearance with Mega Raichu X and Y, and as great as it is, $30 game. What caught my interest was Hoopa's role described in the DLC info. Hoopa plays an important role in Mega Dimension's expanded story. This mythical Pokemon can warp space using the rings on its horns and body, so we're curious to see what sort of mischief it gets up to. And distortions in space have appeared without warning in Lumio City. They seem to connect to a mysterious space, Hyperspace Lumios. These descriptions are what began my descent into madness, that is the deep lore of distortions and space-time anomalies and paradoxes, and now leads me to believe that Pokemon like Terapagos have unique abilities that fans have been fighting over for a while as either time-traveling powers or what I will term reality traveler. So in order to begin my crazy talk, I would like to establish a few terms first to help explain where I'm going with this. Dimensions. What's a dimension in the world of Pokemon? While there is never a concrete definition and is used very loosely, with some Pokemon like Porygon 2's Pokédex description talking about it being used to explore different dimensions, whatever that means, other Pokemon like the Creation Trio also have their own dimensions in which they reside, but more on that later. For now, I propose a following definition to be used: a type of reality that comes in many variations in the Pokemon universe. And it's interesting to note that all were not created by Arceus, such as the home dimensions of Palkia and Dialga as some examples. And it is here where we get to go a little crazy. Some of these dimensions include realities and realms like the home of Arceus. More on that in a bit. Baseline reality, the distortion world, Megalopolis, Ultra Space, Hyperspace, the Ghost World, Dream World, the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon realm, the home dimension of Unknown, and the Lake Guardian realm. Yes, they have their own dimension, to name a few. So you might be thinking to yourself, whoa, baseline reality, the Ghost World, Mystery Dungeon? What's all this got to do with Hoopa? To which I say, yeah, it's a lot. Sorry. Up with the next term, baseline reality. What's that? Why call it that? Is it a specific thing? And the answer to those is, wait for it, sounds cool, I don't know. We know that the firing of the ultimate weapon built and used by King AZ resulted in a split timeline, one where Mega Evolution now exists and a world where one doesn't. Alright, thanks for the cryptic wording, Zinnia, but that's not helpful if you want to get a more concrete wording, so I propose the following definition to be used. The Pokemon series prior to the events in X and Y, where King AZ built and fired the ultimate weapon powered by infinity energy to create a split in dimensionality, severing these cluster of dimensions from those of the Mega Timeline. So it's a fancy word to describe a dimension without Mega Evolution. Yes, but I'm not sure if it should include other gimmicks as well, like Dynamax, Terrestrialization, since that may tie into another idea I have revolving infinity energy and its presence in the Pokemon world. Side note, according to Bulbapedia website, it's speculated that the Archie and Maxie recruited by Rainbow Rocky Giovanni are from this baseline reality, since they do not primal reverse Groudon or Kyogre in Alola against the hero, Sun or Moon. Now at this point it may seem like I lost the plot, but I assure you, dear viewer, that will hopefully make sense in the end. Maybe. Possibly. Hopefully? Linearity is the next section, and hopefully not too complicated, since this will define the next set of definitions moving forward. Linear. When I say something is linear, or that something is a linear time traveler, I'm referring to this word, so pay attention. A term used to describe linear timeline and events in the Pokemon world. A linear timeline will depend on events in the past to directly impact the present and future. This can be manipulated in several ways, like the space-time distortions, once encountered in the lands of Hisui to bring Pokemon such as Rampardos from the linear past or Magnezone from the linear future, relative to the time point in Hisui. Although it feels a bit shaky since Pokemon brought from the linear future should in theory impact the present and future as a result, I'm still sticking to this definition since these events are from the same timeline, and personally, I am doubtful that Paradox Pokemon are from the linear future and may instead be from the non-linear future. Which brings us to the next definition. Non-linear. Creative, I know. My genius knows no bounds. Non-linear. The term to describe non-linear timelines and events in the Pokemon world. A non-linear timeline does not depend on events in the past to directly impact the present or future. This can be seen in concepts of Ultra Wormholes in Alola and in Paldea with Terapagos' abilities and Professor Sada and Professor Turo's Time Machine bringing Paradox Pokemon. It is with this proposed definition that Paradox Pokemon might be from the non-linear past and future, given some of the Dex's entries descriptions that do not align with the linear timeline perspective, such as Screamtail as a Jigglypuff from 1 billion years ago, predating multicellular life in our world, which is an altered version of the Pokemon world, so basically the same thing. Does make sense. Screamtail is not the only one who has a weirdly contradictory Dex entry, like Iron Bundle, as being created by an ancient civilization, despite being made in the future, which is a concerning thought to think about. Okay, last definition, I promise, I am lying, is the meat of the matter, the spatial distortion phenomenon, or spatial distortion. I propose that it be defined as an umbrella term or a phenomenon due to the natural occurrence or the direct power used by an entity that can be specified into two specific categories depending on the context. In Sun and Moon, the spatial distortions were caused by Ultra Wormholes, mysterious portals that connect the Pokemon world to Ultra Space, the dimension where Ultra Beasts can be found in other things as well. In Legends Arceus, they are space-time distortions caused by Giratina and warp the fabric of reality, space-time. Here's a few bullet points to quickly summarize it. These irregularities can be found in many different ways. The Aether Foundation's experiments with Cosmog, whose evolution into Solgaleo or Lunala allow it to open wormholes. 2. The Ultra Recon Squad in Sun and Moon, who come from Ultra Megalopolis and study these distortions. 3. The legendary Pokemon Necrozma, whose unstable energy and hunger for light caused massive dimensional instability. Now, it has been seen opening Ultra Wormholes by fusing with either Solgaleo or Lunala and turning into Duskmane or Dawnwing's Necrozma, respectively. So it's only done when fused and not a natural ability in normal Sun and Moon, but Ultra Sun and Moon added the ability to traverse through Ultra Wormholes and make them too. 4. Giratina. Giratina can open up space-time distortions, but it stopped doing so after the events in Legends Arceus. This begs the question, can I do it again if it so wanted to in the modern day, or did it gain some thoughts of guilt after the events of Legends Arceus and vowed to never again do so? A dark horse contender, but this is somewhat expected as Jirachi, who can open up Ultra Wormholes if wished to do so. What I learned through my Madman research is that in Pokemon Masters EX, it did this very thing. Specifically, it opened an Ultra Wormhole to return people who fell into them. 6. Eternatus and its arrival 20,000 years ago triggered massive energy distortions, hence Ultra Beasts being Dynamaxed in the DLC. This is probably similar to Ultra Wormholes in Alola as suggested in the Crown Tundra DLC. Is this similar to Ultra Wormholes in Alola as suggested in the Crown Tundra DLC? It seems so, but I never got to play the DLC and confirm this. But the explanation Game Freak gave would imply that not only is Eternatus an extraterrestrial, but is probably not from this dimension since it seems to endlessly pour out energy, violating our known understanding of physics, making it an entity on the level of the creation trio or something else from a different place. Okay, so assuming I haven't lost you yet, you can start to make sense of how these things may tie into the crazy ramblings described in the beginning, and we can now start to categorize some Pokemon with these proposed definitions I made up a few days ago. Totally legit. Linear time travelers. Kind of a simple premise now that we know linearity. Pokemon that would fall into this category would include Celebi, a Pokemon that only appears in peaceful times, meaning that it comes from the best timeline where it is guaranteed to be born. So if it doesn't exist in your reality, panic and be afraid. This also includes Pokemon like Dialga that governs time itself but exists beyond the confines of reality itself and resides in its own dimension away from Arceus, Palkia, and obviously Giratina. Notice that Pokemon like Terapagos is not here, and for good reason. But the last thing I want to put into this category are the space-time distortions. As briefly mentioned earlier, a space-time distortion is a type of spatial distortion found in the lands of Hisui, but never explained if it can only occur here. Wink wink, nudge nudge. It was what we in the business call a power move by Giratina to irk Arceus and draw it out in order to get vengeance for being banished to the distortion world. It allows the player to collect rare items and encounter rare Pokemon that are otherwise unobtainable in the wild, like Pokemon from the linear timeline example provided. Now what's interesting to question is that it might link to other worlds or time periods in a non-linear manner. I would hazard a guess and say possibly only time periods, since our character from the future was mentioned to have fallen out of the sky in the beginning of Legends Arceus. The idea of connecting to other worlds has not been confirmed by the creators or by new entries into the series, though this is hard to disprove. And apparently, these were caused by Giratina. But we were not summoned by it and instead by Arceus? Or were we directly transported from the linear or non-linear future after being spirited away from our home? Clearly, there's a lot of baggage, so I want you to think over these things for a bit and leave a comment below which you would agree makes sense, or not make sense at all, so we can have a clearer idea on how these things work in the Pokemon world. While you're at it, leave a like and subscribe. Okay, so there's linear time travel, but there's non-linear time travel in the world of Pokemon? Well, I'm saying yes only because it helps explain Scarlet and Violet, especially after the kerfuffle with DLC, with the DLC leaving us with a big ambiguity on Sada and Turo, Heath, and Terapagos, the Little Menace. First in this category is Professor Sada and Turo and their quote-unquote time machine. This time machine, built by Sada or Turo, is said to be a device that actively pulls living Paradox Pokemon from the past or future timelines. But the DLC in the Pokédex contradicts this claim in significant ways. For one, they are not getting fossils and restoring them. They are actively pulling something that is real, so not a dreamed up creature either. The AI counterpart described the time machine, but I'm pretty sure it would cause massive time paradoxes if that was true, since you can't pull a dinosaur from the past if it was supposed to eat or be eaten by another, which causes a large cascade effect, forever altering the present timeline. The same can be said with the future Paradox Mons, as having something like a Terminator sent back into the 90s could result in a future timeline that may be ahead of schedule, allowing us to question if each iteration would bring forward more and more advanced versions of the same Terminator. But they did it anyways, and nothing has seemingly happened to change the dex entries or how the world as far as we can explain it, so there must be something else happening. Some fans speculate that it is just time travel since we were told this, but others have argued that maybe we're pulling from other realities at the same age of the universe and just pulling them here, which would also be true since we had the event with Terapagos at the Crystal Pool in the Mask DLC. Instead of having one thing or the other, I've decided to place this entry into the non-linear time travel category to best fit this confusing conundrum, negating any possibility of paradoxes from arising while having it be true that time travel may be happening by pulling from an adjacent timeline and bringing them over to us. Okay, but how? And where's the proof of that? The second contestant in this entry, Terapagos, a critically endangered Pokemon that appears to be the last of its kind, only male in the Scarlet Violet games, and apparently female in the Pokemon Horizons anime. I would speculate that this may be a mutated version from the species due to the crystal energy in the Area Zero. It doesn't use its supposed time-traveling powers to pull members of its own species to any point in time after the events that wiped them out. So that's what led me to piecing together its abilities. We know it can manifest visions of the dead, or living distant entities, as seen in the Crystal Pool scene where we meet Professor Sada or Turo. who may be deceased from another timeline or dimension, implying nonlinear traversal abilities. Or in the Horizons anime, when we see a manifested memory of Lucius, the hero from a few centuries ago. And I'm gonna be brave and say that Terapagos does not directly manipulate time, but instead tap into memory, crystallized energy, and dimensional echoes, allowing people to interact with beings that are either dead or from another reality, but not known if this echo can be altered or manipulated to any significant extent. Does this make it possibly a dimensional anchor, capable of accessing adjacent timelines or realities without disturbing our own timeline? Not like Hoopa's rings or ultra wormholes, so not quite a reality traveler or time traveler, maybe? While we don't know for sure, I'm hoping we can learn more about Terapagos in future installments or Masters EX to better know its powers. Hopefully. Maybe. Next are reality travelers, starting with the ultra wormhole phenomena, which I would like to refer to this with the following proposed definition. A phenomenon appearing as a dimensional rift, like a doorway to ultra space, similar to spatial distortions, that connects the Pokemon world to worlds within these ultra wormholes, allowing for interdimensional travel. Maybe it can be written to include non-linear time travel as well to better fit the category? Or would that extra bit be what makes it distinct from space-time distortions? Regardless, the community at large also speculated that these types of wormholes are similar to space-time distortions found in the lands of Hisui, so it would be safe to assume that there might be some parallel here. Something that can't get out of my head is that exiting wormholes from ultra space results in X light years traveled, implying some kind of intra-dimensional space travel in universe instead of interdimensional travel to other realities? I don't know, it's quite mysterious. Next in the reality travelers category would include Pokemon like the Cosmog line that can use ultra wormholes to move from one dimension to the same or another dimension. Similarly, I would also place Palkia and Giratina here since Palkia governs space but exists outside of dimensions and in its own dimension. Similarly, Giratina seems like it's able to exist in the distortion world just fine, a separate dimension from other realities, but since there might only be one Giratina existence as part of the creation trio, we can assume there's only one distortion world that can work as a gateway to other dimensions like ultra wormholes and ultra space. The Ultra Recon Squad would also fit in this category since we know they somehow came across Necrozma at some point, confined it, broke it, and had it escape someplace else. Aside from that violation of ethics and probably interdimensional law, they seem like really nice people in the present day in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, where the Ultra Recon Squad now investigates distortions related to ultra wormholes and ultra space. By all accounts, it doesn't seem like they can travel to past timelines to correct these anomalies, so that's why they're placed here. I would like to expand upon thoughts about these guys in a future video, so I'll leave it here with these guys. Finally, the next contestant in this category is the source of all my headaches. Hoopa. You little nightmare of a Pokemon that caused endless thoughts and ideas about how it fits into this puzzle that I made, and I can now say what it really is. It's the one responsible for causing spatial distortions across Lumiose cities in the upcoming Mega Dimensions DLC, leading to a mysterious realm called Hyperspace Lumiose. While we may not know about this place, we know Hoopa's true power is said to have been sealed away in the prison bottle for the destruction it used to cause, reducing Hoopa to its smaller, weaker form. The rings on Hoopa's body can warp space and allow it to transport anywhere it wants without much hassle. In some quotes, Hoopa is said to have the power to bend dimensions, or how Hoopa can even bring people and Pokemon from alternate timelines, which is what we see in the trailer, but that opens up a huge can of worms. Does it cause distortions in the fabric of reality? Not going off of the anime too much, but we know it can summon Pokemon like the creation trio if it wanted to, but can it also do other things we may have seen in the series? What's the deal with hyperspace? Why make it a separate term? We know it learns hyperspace fury, but apparently it's called interdimensional rush when translated from Japanese. So there's this new word, hyperspace, and interdimensional. What do we know about these things? Ultraspace is an interdimensional realm, similar to space, said to exist between many different worlds via ultra wormholes. It is also where the Cosmog line naturally inhabits along with Necrozma, but it's unknown how these entities came to inhabit this dimension. Maybe a topic for a future video. The description of this locale sounds similar to a space-time highway that can be used by the Cosmog line to traverse non-linearly at will, possibly, or just completely linearly. This can be corroborated by Kartana and Guzzlord's homeworld inhabiting humans. In particular, Guzzlord's homeworld resembles a destroyed Alola in the future, but it's unknown if Guzzlord directly brought ruin to this world or if it's cleaning up the after effects of an unrelated disaster. Another future video. Maybe. Hyperspace is the newest term in the Pokemon world, and there's not much known about it other than it can be used to take us to Hyperspace Lumiose. What does that mean? Where is it in terms of dimensions? Is it its own dimension? Is it another space-time highway like Ultra Space, but is this the only location that connects to other worlds? Since we don't know, I'd like to pose an idea. Hyperspace Lumiose may be a thematic parallel to Ultra Megalopolis, as is Hyperspace a parallel to Ultra Space. Could this potentially clue us into the number of Pokemon we can expect to see from this DLC, such as 11 Ultra Beasts from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon? If these are not coincidences but purposeful, I think this could clue us to what Necrozma truly is. Think about it. Hoopa, the little genie gremlin that is constantly in a nerve state and usually unable to tap into its true potential, is able to open up the gateway to other realities as a reality traveler without impacting linearity in the actions it may cause with distortions. With a similar description, Necrozma is constantly in a nerfed and in pain state that is unable to tap into its true potential and is able to open up the gateway to other realities as a reality traveler too. Think about it. Hoopa can open up portals to other realities directly like the video game Portal, but what if this DLC and Hyper Lumiose allow us to traverse this hyperspace like we can with Dawnwings or Dustmane Necrozma? Could Hyperspace Lumiose work as a hub of sorts like Megalopolis, and can we depart from there to these other realities? Given the recent track record of Pokemon, I don't think that'd be likely, but it's fun to speculate what the intentions might be for Hoopa being able to use its powers and cause a new wave of never before seen Pokemon to pour into our world. Maybe in a similar way, these Pokemon from these mega dimensions will have us visit the homeworld of these Pokemon and get their Mega Stones, not in a way that is too dissimilar from traversing Ultra Space to visit the homeworld of the Ultra Beasts. Okay, that was a long-winded explanation, but the short end of it all is that Necrozma and Hoopa have really similar story roles, and we may be able to visit these worlds where the new Mega Pokemon may be emerging from. Plus, it would not surprise me if Ultra Beasts make a return or introduce new Ultra Beasts from other worlds we never got to see in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. I also got to set some ground rules for common terms in future videos and establish how distortions in Pokemon can result in slightly different irregularities in any world of Pokemon, like space-time distortions, ultra wormholes, hyperspace distortions, all being part of the same category. Although this is all just unsupported and just my ramblings, I hope you also come to agree that these things are too similar to just ignore, and hope that you like and subscribe and stick around for another future video speculating about the Pokemon world. Until next time.